Sunday, the Hardy Boys in a race with death. Then, a visitor from beyond all galaxies.
Who are you?
A demonic messiah with the power of life and death.
This man is some kind of a god.
Is this the end or a new beginning for Battlestar Galactica?
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
His paintings redefined comic book heroes. His vision inspired a generation. The Legend of Kingdom Come is the definitive documentary on Alex Ross, known as the Norman Rockwell of comics.
It almost looked like Renaissance paintings, except for superheroes.
He makes them look like Olympian gods.
We go behind the scenes of his definitive graphic novel, Kingdom Come, now on Blu-ray, packed with exclusive interviews and unseen artwork. Order today at legendofkingdomcome.com.
If you're here at Word Balloon, it's because you like comics, creators, conversation, pop culture subjects. Would you consider joining the League of Word Balloon Listeners? Patreon.com/wordballoon. For just $3 a month or more, you'll get exclusive access to the Word Balloon e-magazine, featuring transcriptions of some of my best conversations. When you subscribe, you'll also be part of the Word Balloon Book Club, where Brian Michael Bendis and I will pick a comic every month to review and discuss live with the League on this show. Join the League today, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you always for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Sucher's with you. I am really excited to talk to these people from IDW. We've got the editors of the fantastic revival of the Twilight Zone. You know, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with a Twilight Zone comic. Good news, there have been exceptional, wonderful one-shots by some of the top talent in comics. And you'll forgive me, guys, but I don't want to screw up anybody's last name. So I will ask Ellen and Nick to introduce themselves fully.
Sure. Thanks for having us on, John. I'm Ellen Boner. I am one of the co-editors on the Twilight Zone series.
I'm Nicholas Nino. I'm also a co-editor on the Twilight Zone series.
Well, great job, guys. Honestly, I am really interested. I've really loved every issue that I've had the pleasure of reading. This first one, for example, by Dan Waters, was just outstanding. Everyone has captured the tone of the original series. I love the fact that it's all in grayscale, which is great as well. But Ellen, I'll ask you first. How are creators being chosen for this?
Well, it always starts with Nick and I sitting down and saying, who do you want to work with? Who are you excited about working with right now? If you could have anyone write a Twilight Zone, who would you want to see write a Twilight Zone? And we talk about this a lot, especially in the text when we're pitching the series to people or talking about it, is that it really is about giving the most interesting and creative minds their opportunity to guide us onto whatever path of the Twilight Zone they're interested in. So it's been a lot of us creating these little wish lists between the two of us and discussing and talking about where we think we could go with it, people that we think would take it really interesting directions, because you have to be a good writer to work in the Twilight Zone. You have to be a really good, and then to do the art, especially in grayscale, that's a really unique skill set. So it's a lot of discussions about who we think will bring something creative and new to the table, but it always starts between Nick and I. It's always the two of us throwing out individual names that we're interested in working with and then sending emails out to people, at least for the first round. And then a really cool thing that started happening in the second round is now that it's come out, people have been coming out of the woodwork and voicing interest in working on the series, which has been like such a huge compliment to the work that all of the previous creative teams have done. And yeah, now we're just continuing on as we're with that process, going through talking about people we've worked with before, new names that this is a great opportunity to get to work with them on something small, like, full issue, of course, but not a whole run.
Yeah, that's the other great thing is they're one shots and self-contained, much like the TV show itself. And again, great opportunity to have these artists showcase in a different way and in a different genre. Although, Nick, I really do like the fact that a lot of these artists are kind of indie flavored artists and everything. Are there going to be anybody? Well, actually, I know, I don't want to reveal because it may be privileged information, but I know a good friend of mine who has a more realistic style that has been tapped for one of the upcoming episodes. And I know another person that is a cartoony artist that has an upcoming episode as well. But yeah, I mean, again, like beyond names, is there a style or an aesthetic that you guys are looking for?
We're not trying to. I guess the short answer is no. The short answer is it's more of who do we want to see play in the sandbox. I think the Twilight Zone is so fun because it's not just horror, it's sci-fi, it's sometimes fantasy, it's so many things, and mostly it's just who do we think has a clear enough voice that we would want to see them play in the Twilight Zone. I think that's such a strength of the series is it's people coming on and doing the thing they do. You know, James Stokoe's issue is so action packed. It's such a James Stokoe comic, and then you get the Twilight Zone twist at the end. Same thing with Tom Scioli. You know, he's always going to be doing retro futuristic stuff in the style of Jack Kirby. And he got to do it in the Twilight Zone this time. So I think largely the way we think about it is almost the way people talk about who's going to direct the next James Bond movie. So who's going to do this next Twilight Zone issue? You know, people love the idea of a Chris Nolan on James Bond because they imagine it's going to be so grand and just ready for IMAX. And it's similar with the Twilight Zone. It's who are some of the best cartoonists in the industry, and you know what they look like in black and white, and just what twist would they put on it.
Yeah, I think that's in the same way as Twilight Zone. We always want somebody who's bringing something a little bit unexpected to their work. Right. All of the people in the first series really do that. All the people in the second series are going to do that as well, where they're just bringing something that no one else draws like Francavilla. Nobody else draws like Scioli. Nobody else draws, you know, these are people who are really bringing something that makes their work so specific to them.
Francesco is coming up, Francavilla, with issue 5, and Greg and the IDW folk were kind to show me a few pages. It looks great. I won't spoil. And forgive me, the name of the writer that Francesco is working with.
L. Marlowe is working on it.
Cool.
Well. Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know L's work, but it again, it looks great. The fantastic thing is all of these writers and artists have really taken genres that are covered in the Twilight Zone. I mean, we're talking in general terms, like you said, you know, Scioli does the space story and everything, and Nate Powell does this amazing story that's coming up actually on February 4th, and very excited for that. And it reminded me in a different way of a Twilight Zone and a 5th season episode, The Bewitching Pool. And that's yeah, all right, excellent. Ellen is nodding her head for my audio audience. And yeah, I mean, that's the great thing. There are echoes of old stories, but they are absolutely original stories. And again, you get this flavor of art. I'm really excited to see Francesco on issue 5 because, God, I remember, again, I was telling you guys, I've been doing this for like 20 years. When I started, I think Francesco was doing a black and white series called The Black Coat with Ben Licious. And it was like kind of a Revolutionary War sort of Zorro Batman sort of hero and stuff, but it was black and white. But since then, you know, I love seeing Francesco in color. So it's going to be fun seeing him back in grayscale and everything. And really, again, without spoiling, I won't spoil the genre for issue 5. But yeah, it's like that. The great thing about the Twilight Zone was it took you everywhere. And it was always, it could just be a normal street corner with a slight bent, or alien worlds, you know, underwater activity. Really, the universe and time and space were there, and obviously, I think the creators are taking that kind of advantage with this series as well.
That's another thing. Timelessness is really important to us with the style, especially artistically. Like anyone who's picked up any of these issues, you can see and feel the retro futuristic sort of timeless vibe we're going through on every single one of these. There's actually a lot of active conversations we've had with artists about whether how much we want to feature certain types of technology, or whether or not a certain reference feels too specific. Because I think one thing that's amazing about Twilight Zone as a modern fan looking back at the original series is it is this element of escapism and nostalgia while being incredibly reflective of timeless humane problems and moral dilemmas. So we wanted to capture that as well.
Nick, what drew you to the series? I mean, were you again, I love the fact that you guys are younger and have gotten into the Twilight Zone, but I really am interested. And also, it's great that you guys are doing this in black and white scale, because really, I liked the 80s show, and I think the 80s show actually was pretty decent for being a sequel show. The 90s show and even Jordan Peele's show, they tried. I'll be honest. They made an effort, and I appreciate it. Black Mirror seems to have been the spiritual ancestor of the Twilight Zone as far as television goes. But Nick, tell me, is black and white not off-putting to you? Because again, it's something I've found with people that are younger than me. They're like, I can't get into black and white.
Absolutely. And I think your mention of Black Mirror is so apt. It is really the successor. And that's partially why, as Ellen said, we're so focused on making these stories timeless, partially because technology wasn't a very distracting part of the Twilight, the first series, because it was in the 60s. But also because anyone doing technology, it becomes a Black Mirror episode. And that's a distinction we want to maintain and respect. But as for the black and white, honestly, that was our idea. I think what we wanted to do with this book was kind of make it a love letter to the series, and bring on people, everyone who's participated in this series, who's contributed, has been such a fan of the original show. They've all had their favorite episodes, and you can tell they all have their favorite genre of episode even. And so it was a no-brainer. I think one thing we wanted to do was to signal, this one's for real. This one's for the real heads. This one's by the real heads. And keeping it in black and white, keeping it in grayscale was just a way to do that, to signal that at a glance. And it's been surprising to us that it's never been done before, because it's such a part of the series, is that it's not in color. And I guess maybe, obviously there wasn't as much color back then on television, so people were less cognizant of it. But it was, with I Love Lucy, the occasional Leave It to Beaver, Ellen, I'm not sure what else you may have watched, but it was one of the few black and white shows I ever experienced. And so in my head, it really stands out as being without color.
Yeah,
so we wanted this to,
I was gonna say, it is to me such an icon of the original series. When I think Twilight Zone, I think black and white. And it was, I think, maybe our first meeting, and it was less of a discussion than you would imagine, where I was just like, one of us said, should we do black and white? And we're like, yeah, of course we should do black and white. And then it was just a matter of getting, disseminating that information and figuring out, if it's black and white, what does that mean about the ads? And our design team has been, and all of our collaborators and licensors and anyone who's involved with our ads, our marketing team have been such great sports getting on board that it's black and white, front to back, ads for everything in it are all in grayscale. I think it just sets the tone.
I agree. And also, it's been fun. The 4 episodes, or I'll call them episodes, they're issues. But let's call them episodes. Why not? No, they hit a lot of the big ideas. But I have to admit, too, that there have been great quiet episodes. I think of Walking Distance with Gig Young, a guy that goes back to his hometown to kind of recapture and find some. You'll forgive me, everybody. Every now and then my internet might be flickering because of the Arctic zone we're all in right now. So I apologize. But it's those kind of personal stories, the quieter ones. God, one of the great Jack Klugman ones in Praise of Pip, where his son is out in Vietnam, and he's in a hall of mirrors, and he's having memories of his kid. It's one of Billy Mummy's, Will Robinson from Lost in Space, one of his child episodes of the Twilight Zone and stuff. But yeah, what are some of your favorites, guys?
Oof. Do you got a Twilight Zone off the top of your head, Nick? I mean, there's so many. There's so many. It's truly just a wild.
It's hard to recall. I really like To Serve Man. I think it's such a epitomized version of the Twilight Zone formula. I think, to summarize it, is aliens come down to Earth. They tell everyone, we're friendly. We just want to help you. We've got this book that's telling us everything we want to know. Linguists are trying to figure out the book. The military is, confounded by these aliens, trying to figure out if this is for real. And eventually everyone kind of gets on board because the aliens improve life on Earth to such a degree. They have all this new technology. Wars are over. Things are just better. And the linguists are they're struggling to decipher this book. All they know is that the cover says to serve man. So they think it's a guide on how to serve man, how to serve humankind. And the aliens start to offer these trips for people to take where they can visit the alien homeworld and see, this paradise that they come from. And our main character we've been following, this linguist we've been following throughout the episode, finally gives up and says, you know what? The aliens are good. I'm going to go see this homeworld of theirs. And while he's in line to get on the spaceship, his colleague comes and says, we cracked it. Good. You have to come with me. We figured it out. It's not it's a cookbook. To Serve Man is a cookbook. He goes, and he screams. And the aliens grab him. They throw him on the ship. And it ends with him in his cell refusing to eat on the journey to the planet because they're basically shepherding all these humans to their homeworld so they can cook them and eat them. And that's how it ends. And it's so, the Twilight Zone story is outlandish thing happening to regular people, and then some twist at the end. And I think To Serve Man really epitomizes that formula in a perfect way. And it was such admittedly, rewatching it this last time, I was watching it with my family, and some family who had never experienced the show. It was, in a really fun way. It was just so funny to watch. It was such, her screaming, "It's a cookbook." It's it's so unnerving, but I think once you also can't help but laugh. It's such a good twist. It's something you don't see coming. They don't set it up in any way.
No, I'm with you, absolutely. Yeah,
no,
please
go ahead, John. I was going to just say, most recently I rewatched Eye of the Beholder, which is the classic one with the pig-faced or the twisted, grotesque face mask. It's very iconic prosthetic, probably maybe one of the most iconic prosthetic makeup pieces ever. And that in itself is such a mark of the Twilight Zone that they were doing these really bizarre, iconic shapes that became so specific to the series that I think anyone seeing, the nurse's hat with the twisted mouth would know that it's now Twilight Zone, or they'd recognize it. Yes. And that episode, to me, I think about that episode and I'm like, was that episode 5 minutes long? Felt like whenever I try and reflect on the events of the episode, it feels so fast because it's the woman, and even now recounting it, it's the woman, she's in surgery. They're talking about how she's the most hideous person they've ever seen. And it's all of the actual medical staff are in shadow, and they unwrap her face and she's this beautiful woman. And then they reveal that the rest of the cast are all in these masks. And it's, of course, a very direct one-to-one about how, our perception of beauty is so based on the societal norms and all of that. And then she goes screaming out of the room. It's very Hitchcock, but she's just running down the hallway with at the canted angles of the camera, and she runs into this other room where she meets another man who is just standardly attractive, no face prosthetics, and he tells her all about this place where she'll be happy, where everyone's like her, and he was like, you'll even feel normal, and soon you'll just feel normal. And I think that's a brilliant one because I really just rewatched this episode so recently, and it feels like the whole episode is the twist in a way that all the other ones I have so much memory of the build up to and all the events until the reveal. And I think it's the Twilight Zone twist or the Twilight Zone episode that lives so much in the twist that it's like, I can't even remember, like, it's hard to remember what was happening before all that. Like, it really feels like the episode starts as her bandages are getting taken off. And I'm like, it's such a heart racing, runaway train to the end of the episode, to the conclusion. It's a great episode. I definitely recommend that one if people haven't seen it.
No, I'm with you. It's agree. I think, and you'll crappy. So if I talk over you, I apologize. The no, that's the great thing. There weren't as many commercials as there are half hour 1960 television. It's probably about 24, 25 minutes of story. And man, they pack a lot of story. And that's a great example. And also, the beautiful woman is Donna Douglas, Ellie Mae from the Beverly Hillbillies. And I don't think it's her voice at the beginning when it's all in take advantage of are the shadows and the opera with an atmospheric sort of way. But yeah, this very angry voice from this woman. And again, we don't see the pig face people. So everything seems very normal. And we can only imagine how ugly. And I'm back. Okay. How ugly the woman would be potentially. And then we get this crazy reveal that no, it's a beautiful person. Well, why is she considered ugly? And then, like you said, we see the difference. So very, very strange. But in a great way. And that's the wonderful thing about a lot of these Twilight Zones. Yeah, they're really tight little stories. And honestly, I could say the same thing. There's really no space wasted in the issues that you guys have given us so far. It's really a great tight little story. I think everyone is really kind of hitting their numbers and everything and making their stories cruise in a very interesting way. So I really enjoyed them. Dan Waters mentioning Eye of the Beholder, Ellen. I think a Dan's issue, this one right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, it's a hospital. Yeah, the blank faces. But again, very original story, but it evokes the memories, I think, of Eye of the Beholder in the best way.
Yeah, we've done a lot of that's another conversation we're always having with the teams, is talking about settings, because obviously we're coordinating with all the teams, so making sure that we're getting a variety of different locations, a variety of different styles of story, getting it like getting in like a more fantastical action-packed story next to a medical drama, next to what Francovia's issue will be. So it's really interesting to kind of balance that, because everyone comes to very similar settings naturally thinking about Twilight Zone, but there are so many to explore. So making sure we're getting a variety of visuals, especially in a series that's black and white, right? If we do 5 medical dramas, that would get, or like just 5 dramas set in 2 similar, or 5 dramas set in space, that would create much too much visual symmetry between all of them. Where also a gift of the black and white is we can have radically different artists drawing very different things, but they all feel very unified because they're all in grayscale.
No question. Completely agree. Absolutely. Nick, again, and what you said, To Serve Man, and all right, Eye of the Beholder. Like I said, Walking Distance is a great one for me. I love I forget what it was called. It was Redford. No Cry in the Dark, or whatever it was, about an old lady who's afraid of dying, and she keeps people out of her apartment because she wants to keep death away. And a very beautiful man kind of slips and falls in front of her house, and he thinks maybe he hurt his back. And so she takes pity on him and brings him in. And it's Redford when he's incredibly young. And, he's the angel of death. And it's so, again, it has this wonderful sentimental twist of, see, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's dying is okay. It's just part of life. And again, it is so interesting how Serling and all those incredible writers. I am such a fan of that entire list of, 1927 Yankee caliber writers, of these all-stars of science fiction that wrote these wonderful stories. You could balance what came from a hard sci-fi space story to something gentle like this Redford story that I'm describing. And yeah, I think that's neat. But again, like you said, the uniform, ironically, the limitations of 1960s television is what kind of keeps it all uniform and everything. Have you guys really paid attention to the writers of some of the TV shows to have any of those favorites? Richard Matheson, who did Nightmare at 10,000 Feet, the Shatner one, is one of my favorite writers.
That's one of the best, and it's certainly one that we refer to a lot. And talking with artists, talking with Paramount, talking with each other, is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. But truthfully, we've mostly focused on the Rod episodes. Just the way that this project had to come together so quickly, in reviewing the show in any way, we kind of had to be very discerning about how much time we spent on it, because we ultimately had to start on the book. And so for the most part, we were using Rod as our North Star to direct, what a Twilight Zone episode was and what it could be. And that was partially because of, where the copyrights lie and such and such.
Any thoughts, Ellen, on any of the other writers? Or excuse me, Nick, I didn't mean to step on you there. I apologize if I did.
No, you're all good.
No worries, John. No, I agree entirely with Nick. I think another thing is, while there are so many great writers on the show, it was really important to us. Like, I kind of look at the group of creatives we brought into this series as our Twilight Zone writers' room. They're writing the next series, the next set of episodes. So, while each writer we're working with or each artist we're working with might be trying to emulate a specific person, I feel like it's them that they're wanting to bring that. Whereas, like, I think that's about. Whereas if I want to look at it as if, Dan Waters or Sho Lee or any of these other artists got to sit down and pitch their episode to a Twilight Zone room. So I'm really thinking about them as our guiding light and where their minds take us.
Was there any thought to, and again, we've got the open narration, so we can imagine, if we are fans of the TV show, that it is Serling that is our narrator. But I always loved it. We were talking off the air before we started about the Gold Key comics, and I did appreciate that every now and then an artist would kind of put a couple panels in of Rod, doing the narration and stuff. Was there any thought to that, or how did you want to approach Serling being the spiritual god, but a participant or not in upcoming issues?
We thought a lot about Serling, and obviously there's a long tradition in comics, especially episodic anthology comics, of having that narrator as a framing device, right? Crypt Keeper, all of these different characters have featured in that way. And there's a lot of complicated things whenever you're starting to work with the likeness of an individual person. So one thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to give creatives freedom to explore how they wanted to do the narrative. We also wanted to be respectful to the original, who Rod was, and also understanding that we didn't want there to be confusion of these are not remakes of old episodes. This is not, Rod did not write these books, obviously, right? There's new creatives on this.
Sure.
And another part of that too is we also play with the idea of doing icons or other characters to represent and like tag out the narration. And what we realized is we really just wanted the stories to stand on their own as well. And any other framing devices we had explored felt like they were stepping on the toes of what the writers might be able to do by just paring it back and just launching us into the story. Whereas if you say every episode or every issue starts with a framing device, then every issue has to start with a framing device that's tying us down and tying the writers to a certain narrative. But yeah, and of course, as I said, there is also likeness is always complicated, and we always want to be as respectful as possible to everyone involved.
Yeah, and that's a big
Nick,
part of it. Is
CBS. I'm sorry, Nick. Again, I apologize. And I
No,
want
you
your
are all
answer, but
good.
also, yeah, is CBS are they vetting? Are they the ones that are vetting these stories, or who do you guys send this to?
Yeah, we have partners at Paramount who own CBS who are uh, vetting the stories, kind of reviewing art, and for the most part, we've done a good job of putting some guardrails on for ourselves, and making sure that everything feels like the show. I think, for example, there are a lot of we're both working on different horror books right now. I'm also working on Event Horizon, which is a very gory, body horror forward type of book, but that's also not what Twilight Zone is. And I think that was
Sure.
something we were very aware of from the beginning. Was we do kind of want to adhere to. We want this book to adhere to CBS broadcasting standards because we want people to feel like they're going back to the show. So that means no swearing, and partially because swearing is so it changes. I think that would have dated the book to have had something like that, but also no body horror or no graphic body horror, and I think that's what makes the show and the franchise, and the comics so fun. Is there is some body horror in the original show. So there's some scary images from that original show that as a kid left me really unsettled before you even got to the twist. Get Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. It was so scary because it was just this guy in a suit with a mask, like moving weird and running up to the window.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That's hilarious. That's very, very funny. Well, it's funny though because you do say that you want to be careful with body horror, and I would say that Dan's issue kind of plays with that in a degree. I mean, you see these blank faces.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting story that I think will disturb in a gentle way, I would say. And then Nate's story, I believe, was it Nate's story that has the
Yeah.
or was it Nate the underwater
shadow
story? Well, Nate's the underwater story. And I guess I was. Which one did I read where well, I guess actually no, it was again Dan's with the virus that is happening in issue
Mm-hmm.
1. I don't want to spoil too much because I want people to be able to reach these. You guys say that these are going to be seasons. Obviously, I would imagine from a collecting standpoint. What is the scheduling? As I said, issue 4 is coming out February 4th. But yeah, are you going to take any sort of hiatus between say the first 5 issues and then come back? What's the plan?
There actually won't be. When we say season, we're not necessarily talking in terms of the comic itself, though we are going to be, in the trade, we're going to be presenting them as, seasons or different, books. But the idea is that just this whole, Twilight Zone comic, this like almost experiment, is intended to be itself a spiritual 6th season of the show. And that's the way we're trying to pitch it to creators. Is you're part of the writer's room for the next season that never happened. And everything to do with the book is in support of that, with the black and white, the 22-page, which is very near like a 22-minute episode, and it's 22-page one-shot issues. It's all, like I said earlier, it's all meant to be a sincere reapproach to the series, because I think everyone can see through anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And to circle back to what you were saying about body horror, I think a really important thing about the Twilight Zone that as a guiding light for us in terms of body horror is like what really sticks with you as a reader or a viewer of the original show is that's in service of the moral quandary. And like, that's supposed to be the thing that sits with you. So I think if at any point we were doing a story, like it's a lovely little cherry on top of a great moral twist, but we don't want the stories to have to rely on body horror to work, right? The moral twist is the preeminent thing. So, and I think that's also a guiding light for why we don't want to go Event Horizon and start ripping people's intestines out in the middle, because then that takes over, right? If that's the most shocking thing in the issue, then I don't know what the moral twist is. I remember there was a really gory panel on page 12 and a crazy spread, which is like we're still doing those, but those things are a cherry on top as opposed to like the heart of the story. And I think that's a good way to look at the balance as well.
Yeah.
I think too that I remember seeing
No
a
question.
bunch of reviews and such for issue 1 where they said they spoiled the twist on the cover, they spoiled the monster. But I think too what Ellen said was that's not the twist. The twist is what happens at the end. It's the character's decision at the end that is the twist.
Yeah, that was a really
No
fun one to
question.
watch come together, because we worked with Dan on that ending, and I won't say explicitly, but there was a very different ending initially. And we talked through, okay, well, what really leaves you morally unsettled? And I think going with like a really complex choice was really fun to watch Dan play with and figure out and bring into that ending. I think it was really cool to watch that, because I completely agree with Nick. It's like the faceless people are one thing, but what's really fascinating is how that main character actually reacts to the scenario.
You know something, Ellen? I'll ask you to repeat yourself, because we all dropped out on my end, at least for a second,
Okay.
and you never know the vagrancies of the cloud. So start that observation again about what you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that I completely agree with Nick that the twist of that episode, or the issue, we do it all the time too on our end, but the twist of that issue is not the creatures. The creatures are the impetus that make our main character make an interesting choice. And I was saying that when we were originally talking through the outlines of the story, there was a very different ending. And we were going back and forth about it with Dan and figuring out what we wanted, and that we landed on, we want something that leaves the reader feeling very conflicted and unsettled about the decision the character made. Because I think a morally obvious choice is available, and the idea of, well, what if you didn't do that? What if you did something different? What if it was kind of just like justified? And how would that leave you feeling? Would you do the same thing? Because I think that makes it more honest. I think there is a level of like, well, would you make the same decision that the protagonist made? I think that's a really great part of what brought that twist together.
Yeah, as a kid, and I think John, you commented earlier that you were so surprised we have such an affinity or such love for the show being so young. I think what's fun is we are old enough to have experienced the Thanksgiving marathons and the reruns on different channels, and sit down with our parents to watch it. And certainly it certainly hit as a kid. And it's interesting to think about what I remember from these episodes as a kid. Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. I remember I'm moving around on the plane wing, freaking out. I remember, the twisted faces. I remember things like that. But the scariest episodes, I think the scariest for me, I can't remember the name of it. I'm kicking myself over it now. I'm sure you can help me, John. That it's the episode where some aliens come down to a little suburban town in America, and they're disguised as humans, and somehow the neighborhood it becomes aware of that, and they all get paranoid and they all start attacking one another, and are suspicious of one another.
They live at. It's the address, I'm pretty sure, is the name of the episode. I know exactly what it was.
Yeah, the monsters are due on Maple Street, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. And that episode ends with everybody running after each other with pitchforks and torches and just breaking into each other's homes and trying to protect their loved ones. And then we cut to, as Rod narrates the outro, we cut to these two human figures boarding a UFO. And that to me was the scariest ending, because they got away, they did it, that was their plan all along. The humans were right.
Yeah.
And it was the moral one. It was the one that turned people against each other, and it wasn't the monster. It wasn't any of the monsters that were the scariest episode to me.
I hear you, man. No, and also that there weren't a lot of happy endings on the Twilight Zone, and you were left with things unsettled, which I found interesting. Wait a minute, again, because especially in that late 50s, early 60s period, that Leave It to Beaver period, no way, man. That justice was always done. The cops caught the bad guy, etc. But yeah, man, no, from a nuclear apocalypse to the paranoia running rampant on Maple Street. Yeah, things were left unsettled. And yeah, sorry, no, time to leave. It's like, wait a minute, what the hell are you doing? So, yeah, I love that about the Zone, and again, reflected in what you guys stories are what the stories are you guys are putting out there and everything. Really,
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm certainly continuing as far as this goes. Did you ever see with the internet? All right, there we go. The storm gods have brought me back in. And now Ellen is
We're bearing with you. We're good.
For a moment, at least as far as my feed. Spielberg, 80 Twilight Zone movie, isn't that?
You're gonna have to. Can you repeat that one for us, John?
I don't know.
Something
if you guys
about
have seen
Spielberg.
the movie, the Spielberg movie from the 80s of the Twilight. Yeah, yeah, of course. Thank you for saying that, Ellen. Because I want, obviously, I want. Well, I'll edit this together. The audio will make much more sense, everybody. I promise you. I'll wait.
Ellen, are you catching any?
I think he was asking if we've seen
the movie.
If we've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Spielberg movie. Yeah. Yes.
So I actually didn't I didn't watch the movie, but I did do research into the movie when I was like prepping to like put this series together with Nick. So I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with the plot. And again, I thought it was a really interesting counterpoint to how we approached it, because it was taking the series in such a different direction, and like it's such a different vision for what it looks like. And it's a movie that holds so much weight to fans of the Twilight Zone, because there's so many split opinions on it, like how people feel about the series one way or that the movie one way or another. I think is really indicative of what the Twilight Zone is for you, and what it means to be in the Twilight Zone. But Nick, have you seen the movie?
Truthfully, I haven't, and it's we've talked about black and white so much. It's funny that I'm going to harp on it again now, but it was in color, and that didn't make sense to me as someone who grew up watching the original. I just never really bothered to check it out growing up, because it just didn't feel right to me.
Well, they were adaptations of a lot of the black and white stories. I'm trying to remember if there was an original story other than the wraparounds. Albert Brooks and Dan Aykroyd do a very funny bookend at the beginning and at the end of the movie, and that is great, because it really is two very funny guys talking about the Twilight Zone and how much they love it. But otherwise, it was Kick the Can, and it was It's a Beautiful Life, the Billy Mooney one with Anthony sending people in the cornfield. A little different. Nightmare at 10,000 Feet. Oh, sadly, the Vic Morrow story was an original story, and unfortunately resulted in that helicopter crash that killed several people, and ruined John Landis, the director. I mean, it really cost him a good portion of his career. So yeah, crazy stuff. Well, guys, unfortunately, I'm going to wrap up just because of the interference that we're getting. But I will thank you and remind people, don't worry, the audio will make more sense. And I'll also invite you guys to come back, and maybe we'll do a Zoom to ensure that these things won't happen on the live feed. But no, everybody, the Twilight Zone from IDW, issues 1 through 3 are currently out. And the good news is this is the James Stoke issue. And the great news is the Nate Powell issue 4, coming out February 4th. So that's great. But Ellen and Nick, thanks a lot for suffering through this. I apologize.
It was a
No,
joy.
there's no suffering
again,
at all.
you're
Yeah,
welcome to come back.
yeah. And again, I've been listening to this show. I think I only mentioned this before we went live, but I've been listening to your show since college, basically. So this has been a huge dream come true, getting to talk to you and be on here.
Well, it's very kind. That's truly kind, both of you. I thank you. And no, you're welcome to come back, and we'll talk more about the Twilight Zone and of other IDW books you're working on. Real fast, Alan, before you leave, because you mentioned Event Horizon. Is there another horror book that you're working on?
So Nick is actually on Event Horizon. So I'll let him speak on that one. I was assisting on the upcoming Quiet Place and the 30 Days of Night issues. And then also outside of that, I do the Tales of the TMNT series. So the Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that is inspired by the new movie and television show that were coming out for the Turtles. So it's really exciting working with some fun writers. Louis Joyce is on the art and he's doing a fantastic job. And then I also work on the new games line at IDW. So I'm working on the Godzilla, the role-playing game. So that's the other major side of my editorial duties, but it's slightly outside the world of comics.
No, that's great though, because I've always appreciated IDW's work in games. But yeah, Nick, other than Event Horizon, what else are you working on?
Yeah, Event Horizon has been so much fun. When I came to IDW, I spent 3 years on the Ninja Turtles, which also was a gift unto itself. But it was so fun getting to go to, talk to Christian Ward and Tristan Jones about, then this issue, they're going to tear out his spine, do whatever they want with it, take the eyes of it too. It was really liberating. So working on Event Horizon. I work on the Street Sharks, which is based on show from the 90s, which was originally a response to the success of the Ninja Turtles cartoon by Fred Wolf and co. And the Sharks have been really fun to work on. I also oversee the Rocketeer at IDW, which has been such a blast to get into. I assisted on that book when I started at this company under editor Scott Dunebeer, who's my first boss in comics, and it's been so much fun getting to just try to fill his shoes, and also just to kind of, I think in the way that I feel that Ellen and I feel Rod Serling on Twilight Zone is this like presence around us. Like Dave Stevens is so present when so front of mind when I work on the Rocketeer. So it's such a privilege to be able to work on that as well. So it's a very, I think Ellen and I have very different, no two projects are alike. It's a really fun kind of day getting to jump from book to book.
Yeah, you don't want to accidentally put your Event Horizon in your Rocketeer or vice versa.
Yeah, your Twilight Zone and your TMNT. That'd be pretty sick, actually.
They'd have a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great, guys. Well, thank you.
Yep.
And like I said, we'll reconvene and talk about some of these other books.
Great. Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot for watching, everybody.
Thanks,
Sorry
John.
for the technical difficulties. My pleasure, guys. Thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for watching. More great Word Balloon by hook or by crook, either by Zoom or here on StreamYard. We'll have more great programming for you this week. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.